Hey y'all, welcome to Convos with Bree. Today is my 8-year anniversary of becoming a certified 200-hour yoga instructor. And it is also day 8 of my visibility challenge. And I thought, what a cool way to celebrate 8 years on the 8th day of this challenge. I didn't even know that was going to happen. I forgot, honestly, that today was the anniversary date and it popped up on my memories. And wow, 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 wow. So, I want to talk about how I got started with yoga because when I found yoga, it was literally the hardest time of my life to date. I was completely devastated, completely heartbroken. I had, I just talked about it, about losing my previous boyfriend before Marco to a undiagnosed heart condition that nobody knew that he had. And one morning he woke up and was experiencing some chest pains. And because he was not even 30 years old, he was advised to sleep it off, try to, rest and see if it got better. And he laid down and never woke back up. And that was the worst moment of my life. And I talked about that a bit the other day. And for the first year and a half, it's all kind of a blur. So my timeline may be a little bit off. But for the first yearish, I just could not anything. Um, I started drinking an extreme amount because I wanted to numb out. I wanted to run away. I wanted to not feel anything. I wanted to pretend like I was doing better than I was. I wanted to pretend like I couldn't be hurt and like didn't, um, I wasn't destroyed. I wanted to pretend I was normal and that everything was fine. And I thought that if I could just drink the pain away, that maybe somehow it would make it real, which I know now, obviously, in hindsight, that was never going to do what I needed it or wanted it to do. And it was only going to amplify all the horrible feelings I felt. Um, it's also ironic because one night when I was really drunk, it was on his birthday. I was so sad. I had a wedding and I was just trying to have a good time because I just wanted to have a good time. It had been so long since I felt anything good, anything fun, anything free. So I just wanted to pretend for the night to be the old version of myself. And by the end of that night, I could not hide from my real feelings. And I got on and I made a live, and like 6 people saw it. And they still to this day will sometimes be like, remember when you made that live? And I still to this day, I don't even know if I've ever gotten on and made, I think I've made like one or two, but it's still a little bit of a sensitive area for me because I regretted it so much. I got on there and just fell apart. And I I made a rule for myself a long time ago that I broke in this moment of my life, that I would never drink alcohol when I was sad or when I was not in control of my emotions. And I broke it after he died because I just honestly, I didn't care anymore. I didn't care about being alive. I didn't care about anything. Nothing was important. Nothing felt real. Nothing felt good. I did not want to be alive. I hurt so deeply in my soul, and I just didn't think I was ever going to make it through. And I I had some friends that came over one day. And granted, it was like 2 in the afternoon, I think, and I was already hammered. And they basically gave me an ultimatum. If I wanted to keep them around, I needed to get a handle on my grief. And I basically told them to get out of my house. And one of them suggested starting yoga. And I laughed and I said, yeah, because yoga will fix this. um, I put it off. I was not going to go. We were not really friends. We didn't really hang out or talk after that. And then I think it was coming up on about close to 2 years after he had died. A friend of mine reached out and asked if I would go to this beginner's yoga workshop with her. It was 4 classes, one every week for a month. And it wasn't hot yoga. It was just in the studio, going over the poses, going over the moves, showing us would, what a class would be like. And I didn't want her to not do it because she didn't have anyone to do it with. So I agreed because even in my worst moments, if someone needed me, I wanted to be there. I was still me deep down in there. So I signed up for the class with her and we went every week. And afterwards, she was like, this is not for me. And I was mortified, you guys. I was mortified. I went from being an athlete, a cheerleader, I played softball, volleyball, to being heavy and out of shape. My flexibility had never been great. I remember even doing the reach test in elementary, and I always had like the worst score, and I hated it. But I couldn't figure out how to get flexible. And I was in that class, and we were doing a forward fold, and I could barely get my fingertips to my knees. And I was just mortified at how far away from my athletic self I had become. And I decided to sign up for a hot yoga class and go by myself. And I did. And oh my God, y'all, I thought I was going to die for real, like just pass out right there on the floor. I was like, this is the craziest thing that why is anyone doing this? Why? Oh my God, this is pure torture. I hated every single second of that class. It showed me how out of shape I was, how out of breath I was, how sweaty I was, oh my God, I could not breathe. I could not move. I could not twist, turn, bend, anything. Balance. I couldn't hear because I have hearing loss. So nothing made sense. I didn't know what we were going into next. I had to constantly scan the room to see what everyone else was doing. I felt the most out of place that I have ever felt in my entire life. Not to mention that I was severely hungover because I was drinking excessive amounts every single day. So I was sweating out booze in a hot yoga class. Oh God, that just makes me sick just thinking about it. Um, it was not good. It was not good. And the entire class, I was looking at the door. I was thinking about grabbing my mat and bolting, but that felt more embarrassing to me than if I just died in the class. So I somehow I made it all the way to the end, and I was laying down on my mat at the end. I could not believe I made it. And then this wave washed over me of clarity, creativity, peace, excitement, all of these things. And I felt something. I felt something good. And I hadn't felt anything good in so long. And I walked out of that class and I said, let me get a membership. Let me do like, I don't know, what do you think? How many times should I be here? And she said, if you want to start and you want to be for real, go 3 days a week. Don't let yourself fall out of that. Just always hit 3 days a week. Any more, awesome. But 3 days is your minimum. That is how you'll make it stick. That is how you will fall in love. And I was like, 3 days a week? How am I ever going to not drink for 3 days to make it to this class? Because by this point, I was revolving my day around drinking. And this class wasn't until later in the evening, most of the week. So, and I was like working and not able to go until night. So I was genuinely torn between drinking and yoga. And then I just realized I could yoga and then drink. So I started going to yoga 3 days a week. And I hated it more by the minute the more I was there. For the entire first month of doing yoga, I think that 99% of the classes that I took, the thoughts running through my brain for 99% of the time was, I absolutely hate this. I am never coming back. I cannot believe I agreed to this. And I started doing this thing where I told myself, well, you paid for a month, so just do the month. And then after the month, you never have to do this again. And then I was in like the third week, and I will never forget. I went to do a forward fold, and my fingertips touched my toes, y'all. I touched my toes. Never in my life had I touched my toes. I had literal tears in my eyes because I'm like a little emotional just thinking about this right now, because that forward fold was like this sign that I was going to make it, that I was going to find my way through this. And I didn't know how that could possibly be true. But I just knew I had to keep going. And the challenge that was yoga was opening something within me that had never been unlocked before. And I will never forget either. I was in there for a Valentine's Day flow. And I typically can't hear the music in a yoga class because I do have hearing aids. I don't wear them all the time. And I went most of my life without wearing them. Back then, I didn't even have hearing aids. I didn't even, I had tried once. It was horrendous. I went roller skating with my son right after I got him. One fell out. Somebody rolled it over, $5,000 like that. Just, oh God, it made me so sick. I was like, I can't be trusted. I hated them in my ears. I was having allergic reactions to everything. It was overwhelming all of my system, my nervous system, everything about it. I hated them. So I thought at that point in my life that I would never have hearing aids again, that I would never be able to hear. I thought that I was on a downhill uh, hearing journey. I didn't think that there was going to be any type of solution that would work for me. So I had made peace with this, and going into the yoga classes, I also just made peace with the fact that I would never be able to hear the instructor. I would not hear the music, and I wouldn't really know what was happening. And then it would be a lot harder for me than it would be for anyone else in the class. And that was okay. I was going to find my way through. And I did. I did. Over and over and over again. I did. And I just was so proud of myself. And I just felt like I was doing absolute magic by sticking this out and seeing this through and facing my fears and the discomfort head on in every area. And also, I was the heaviest person in the yoga class. I was the least skilled person in the class. And I had all of this on top of it. So now I'm also the most lost person in the class. And it was very obvious to me that I was the weakest link. And that is not somewhere that I have ever enjoyed or thrived being in that position. So it brought back a lot of very, very traumatic memories for me about growing up with hearing loss and living in a hearing world. And most days I left there just wanting to cry, but I didn't. I didn't. I didn't cry. I didn't leave there crying. I instead learned to feel empowered. But Valentine's Day rolled around, and they turned the music up, and it was all love songs, and I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle it. He should be here. I should be celebrating Valentine's Day with him. All these love songs, all this love, and I had all this love with nowhere to go. And it absolutely shattered me, and it absolutely broke my heart. And then I started crying on my mat, and I just let the tears fall. I just let them fall. I just felt my feelings, and then I let them off me, and I made it through the class. And I was really, really proud of myself for sticking that out and pushing through, and it felt really good. And then I could see all of these things that I was accomplishing. And I started signing up for the bonus classes. And I found myself going 4 to 5 days a week more often than I was doing 3. I was I was getting pretty involved with yoga. And sometimes I'd do 2 a day. Some weeks I'd show up every single day of the week. And then I started taking these extra classes that would come in and workshops, things like that. And I did a backbending workshop. And it was so funny because, once again, I'm in this workshop and I am the weakest link, is how I viewed myself. And I kept trying to participate, and the instructor seemed more nervous around me than excited about me being there. And I couldn't quite put my finger on why. And I went to assumptions about it. And I figured that it was because she didn't feel I belonged there either, because I was the weakest link and I was so out of shape. Even after I was doing all this yoga, I was still so out of shape. And I couldn't do a back bend. There was no way I could do a back bend. And then, as we had been building our skill set and our movement patterns around backbending, she wanted us at the end of the workshop to try to do a backbend. I figured everyone in there would do it, and I would be the only one that did not. And she asked us who would demonstrate doing a backbend. We'd have one of us would assist and guide, and the other one would do the actual movement. And nobody would do it. Nobody. No hands raised. The awkward silence came and went, and we didn't think anyone was going to actually end up doing a backbend at that point, which was the whole point of this workshop. And I could see the little bit of panic setting in when she realized that nobody was going to be brave enough to try this. And all of a sudden, I could feel all of her self-doubt and all of her insecurity. And I didn't want her to be insecure because the workshop was really, really, really great. And even if I couldn't do a backbend, I had gotten so much out of it. I felt so much more confident in my ability to move my body and understand my body and work with limitations and help to advance those limitations so that we weren't limited. And I wanted her to know that she did a really great job. So I raised my hand. And one of the other people in the class were like, "Well, I'll help Bree. I'll help her. I'll guide." And so I got up and I was like, "I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, but let's give it a go." And I did it. I did it with no guidance. His hands followed me, but he didn't even have them really holding me. He was just there to let me know he was there. And it was slow, 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 slow. And I got it. And I did it. And then everyone in the class started trying. Y'all, I just remember feeling absolutely invigorated that I set that off, that I was the one that was brave enough. And I realized I had been selling myself short this entire freaking time by making myself the weakest link in my brain because of what my body looked like, because of what I was going through, because of how far I had fallen. That's how I was looking at it. But I was missing what was right in front of me. And that was how hard I was trying and how committed I was at the worst time of my life. And at this point, I wasn't drinking at all the way that I had been because my life was starting to revolve around yoga. And I didn't want anything to negatively impact my yoga class. It was so quickly becoming my favorite place to be. And it was my time. It was what was meant for me. And once that happened, everything started changing. And I realized I need more than just classes. Now I want to understand why we're moving the way we're moving. What connections between movement? Like, I wanted to be able to walk into a class and predict where we were moving into so that I didn't have to keep looking around at everyone else so hard. I didn't want to have to stay out of a natural flow pattern because I didn't know what was going on because I couldn't hear. And I never had any intention of teaching yoga. I didn't think that I would ever do that. I didn't have any type of confidence that I could ever even be a yoga instructor. Up until this moment, I thought I was the weakest link, that I didn't belong, I didn't fit. Who would ever want to take a class from me? Who would who would listen to overweight, alcoholic, depressed Brie? Like, I wouldn't take my class. That's how I felt. And I didn't expect anyone else to take it either. And I walked into a brand new studio because I wanted to put myself in a place of even more discomfort, because now I was seeing, for like really the first time in my life, how much growth comes from uncomfortable areas and from putting myself in scenarios that I previously would have never put myself in. And if that got me this far, where could I go in a brand new studio where I knew nobody, where I knew nothing but uncomfortable? And I walked in and I had wiped out my entire savings. And I said, I have hearing loss. I am still pretty new to yoga, but I want to know this for me. Can you work with me on this? And she said, yep. And she took my money and I was signed up. And I could not believe I just did that. I could not believe it. And it was going to be intensive. I was basically going to be living at that yoga studio. And I I was going to essentially learn a whole new language in terminology, in movement, in flow, in energy, in all of it. And honestly, it was one of the hardest times of my life. Still, I was not in a great space mentally. Um, I was still very much so struggling with the loss and the grief and the feeling of being at war with life itself, with being at war with my body, with being at war with my breath, with all of it. And a lot of the teachers at the time were also dealing with their own personal struggles. And everyone was having a pretty tough time managing their emotions. And there was drama and negativity, and there was love and laughter and light. And it was one of the most uncomfortable, terrifying, hard experiences that I've been through. And although I genuinely didn't have any idea how I was going to make it through this training and what I was going to do with it, and if I just wasted all this money or and time, or if this was going to take me somewhere, I really didn't know. I didn't have any answers about what this was. All I knew was that it was a feeling deep down in my soul, and I had to trust it. I had to trust it. I just wanted to know where it was going to lead. And I ended up meeting some of the greatest people I've ever known, and I just felt so blessed to have these people in my life and to be able to learn from them and with them. And when training was over, I was genuinely sad. I felt like I had just had another love, a deep love that was lost, because now this had become my everyday. These people, I saw them all day, every day. I, this was like, it felt like my home. And now I didn't have my home anymore. I was expected to go out into the world. And even if I came back to the studio, I was no longer teaching yoga there. I was no longer part of the team. So now I just had to go back to being a student in an environment that I now only knew how to be a teacher in. And I struggled too because I didn't understand why I wasn't working there. And I didn't understand why I was losing my home. But I also knew I couldn't stay in that environment. And I knew that things were changing. And I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I knew I had to allow it to change. And it was tough for me because although I knew that and thinking of that was what brought my body peace, it brought my brain panic and it brought my brain more grief and more sadness because it was the opposite of what I thought I wanted. And right after that happened, I taught at this, I ended up going and teaching at this absolutely incredible, beautiful studio with the best people. Some of them came from the studio that I had just gone through training at. And I was so happy that we were all like branching out into this new avenue together. And it was so fun and it was so, so beautiful. And I loved everything about it. But I was still really struggling deeply with the confidence and not feeling good enough and not feeling sure of myself. And I was so afraid. I was so afraid somebody was going to get hurt or something bad was going to happen. And I didn't know how to prevent that. But I showed up every day. And although I would dread it up until the moment it was happening, the minute it was happening, it was like, bam, I remember this is why I do this. This is why I'm teaching. This is why I'm getting uncomfortable and branching out. I was really changing lives. People would stay after and want to um, just pick my brain and ask for advice. And I was incredible with beginners or even advanced students that were missing connective pieces. I was really great at that. And I credit a lot of that to my hearing loss. But then one day, it was summer and it was so hot. And this studio was not a hot yoga studio, which was my one hang up with it actually, because I love hot yoga. I do better in hot yoga than regular yoga. And for so many reasons. And so I was a little bit more uncomfortable and I didn't realize it then, but I was looking for a little bit of comfort in my discomfort. And without having the hot yoga, it made me feel even more inferior to my skill set and my talent and what I was doing. So I ended up um, in this about to teach this class, and nobody had signed up because every studio in town and the surrounding areas had actually canceled their classes because it was so hot outside that they were actually worried about the safety of their students. And since we weren't a hot yoga studio, it kind of made our building like a normal hot yoga studio. So I didn't want to cancel. Well, everybody else did want to cancel because it was too hot and they just didn't want to do it. They didn't even want to do the drive to get to the studio. And for me, that never mattered because if something like that happened, like there was like a big event going on and we knew like nobody was probably showing up for any of the classes that day, we would just stay and flow ourselves or with others. We'd film, progress videos, things like that. And we'd have this whole gorgeous studio to ourselves to just vibing, and it was awesome. And they had these giant garage doors. Oh God, you could kick them open, and it was just this field out behind it with this great breeze, and it was so soulful and beautiful. So to me, I was like, I'm gonna go have the time of my life, this one way or another. And it was like 10 or 15 minutes after class would have started. So I was safe. Nobody was coming. And I'm doing a little flow. I've got the music up, the door open out back. And all of a sudden, someone's knocking at the front door. And I go get it. And this girl walks in that I recognized. And she says, Hey, I'm so sorry I'm so late, but I've never been here and I couldn't find the studio. And I said, Well, hey, girl, everybody canceled because of the heat, but come on in. We can do a one-on-one if you're okay with it. And she was like, Are you sure? Like, I'm late. I don't want to interrupt your flow, any of that. And I said, No, come on in. Let's work on it. So we had a conversation about what she'd been struggling with. And I designed a class on the fly for her, building around the movement that she needed. We ended up, she ended up staying there like a half an hour late and talking about this upcoming wedding. And she even ran out to her car to get her phone so that she could show me pictures of this wedding dress that that was in this wedding. And she was just so excited about it. And we just had an absolutely lovely, lovely, lovely time. She thanked me profusely. She told me how much she appreciated me, how much she got out of it, how much she loved the studio. And then she left. And then I got a notification. I think it was about an hour later. And it was in the training class group that I did not know I was still a part of. And she was a current training. So she was in this training class that I had just been a part of. She was in the next round. And she was reviewing me and the studio. And she absolutely trashed everything. She trashed me. She trashed the studio. She trashed everything. And the owner of the studio got on and started commenting about how she knew I'd never make it. And she knew that was what the experience would be and all of these mean things. And I was so heartbroken because people are so mean. They are such liars. They are so fake, two-faced, just shitty, shitty people. And I was so tired, y'all. You also have to understand at that point in time, I was getting so much behind the back talk about what they assumed had happened to my boyfriend, what they thought I was feeling, how they thought I was handling things, but nobody knew because nobody was talking to me. And instead of anyone being kind to me in that moment, everyone pretty much just isolated me. They didn't know what to say. They didn't know what to do. And little did they know that most of what they were saying was getting back to me in one way or another. And people that I thought would never hurt me were hurting me daily. And my faith in humanity was so low at this point in time. And I wanted to quit immediately. I did not do teacher training to get stuck in this shithole place that all of these surrounding yoga teachers were in. God, that was like the biggest surprise to me is just how shitty in their core these love and light people were. There were so many of them, y'all, so many of them. I knew a handful of beautiful instructors at this point, and I knew studio after studio after studio of these shit instructors who were making fun of students, who were staying after and saying poor things about people in class. And it was like encouraged because they wanted that studio to be the ultimate studio. And I knew from my training, if you brought good things, you were reprimanded. If you brought good things about other teachers, that wasn't going to fly. You wouldn't pass like that. And honestly, I was getting a taste of my own medicine because I also looked for the negative so that I could fit in. And I was harshly judging. And I don't know who else saw that, who knew what I was saying about them. I was getting a taste of my own medicine. And I was those people that I hated so much. And I was being the same person they were. I was doing the same things. It was disgusting, and I needed to change it. And here I was in this studio with all of these instructors who weren't like that. They were love and light. They were peace. They were kindness. They were empathy. They were beautiful, beautiful humans. And I didn't fit. I didn't fit because I couldn't stay strong when I was influenced. I couldn't stay strong in who I was when people that had more power than I did wanted me to behave in a different way. I did. And I was so disappointed in myself. And it came right back around. And right after that, I knew I was quitting. I knew I was done teaching. I knew I needed to do some really hard soul searching. But I couldn't bring myself to quit because I loved the studio. I loved the people. The owner of that studio was just like a little piece of heaven on earth. And I didn't want to let her down. I wanted it to be successful. I wanted to be successful, but I just knew I didn't have it in me right then. And then I fell and I tore, I don't even know to this day, the entire muscle all the way up my leg from my heel all the way up. I couldn't even walk. I couldn't anything. And I sat on the couch for like a month and I started drinking again and I quit doing yoga and woe is me. I am such a victim. Everybody hurts me. Everybody hates me. Nobody understands. Nobody is kind. Nobody is good. Life hates me. Life is always going to knock me down. And I sat in that. And I wallowed in that. And then I remembered who the fuck I am. And then I remembered I just did a 200-hour teacher training for myself. I didn't do this for anyone else. I did this for myself. I did this because I was dead inside and I needed to bring myself back to life. And I had started to do that. And I did not do that just to let some shit tear me back down. Some people who were insecure and who were struggling themselves and who also couldn't rise above. People who were surrounded by yoga, by this intimate practice and these people. And they were completing and succeeding in their dreams of owning these studios and of bringing this to the world. And yet they were still so far from themselves, from connection, from bridging the gap that I promised they had been looking for when they did this, when they started, when they opened these studios. How could I hate on somebody and unfairly judge somebody for their actions when I had no idea what they were going through? I had no idea what it was inside of them that was making them feel like the only way to their happiness was tearing us down. I I understood in that moment that this was all for something. This wasn't to hurt me. This was to change me. It was to heal me. It was to bust me wide open and make me see everything in a way that I couldn't deny and I couldn't keep skipping over or pretending wasn't there or doing my best to ignore. And I quit drinking for, I think it was like a month. And I started rehabbing my leg at home with yoga, with what I knew. I started deepening my knowledge. I started branching out and that led me into trying everything. I got certified as a pound instructor. I got certified in I think it's like 10 other um, classes of different varieties, HIIT classes, all of these things. And I tried booty yoga and I went to any class that I could find that was new and innovative and just a different way to have fun while working out and challenging your body and seeing how you could move and seeing how you couldn't. And I started connecting pieces between boxing and Tai Chi and Kung Fu and pound and booty and yoga and HIIT workouts and strength training and just sports. Everything that I had been a part of, I started connecting it all and I started having fun again. And my body felt stronger than ever. And all of a sudden, it started clicking. I didn't do this to be like anybody else. I did this because I was bridging my own gaps. I was making my own path. And all of these pieces were teaching me valuable lessons and growing me and getting me uncomfortable and out of my comfort zone completely so that wherever it wanted to take me, it could. Yoga changed my entire life. It opened doors for me that I never would have known I could open. And every piece of the journey along the way, absolutely hating the classes, having no faith in myself, having no faith in others, being hurt, being let down, disappointed. All it showed me in the end was that we're just all human, no matter how much more power we think somebody else has over us, or no matter how much better we think somebody is doing. We're honestly all just struggling. We're all just trying to bridge our own gaps. We're all just trying to figure it out. And for most of us, we do these things only to find the answers aren't as easy as we thought they were. And they're not just one fix away. It's a lifetime journey of ebbs and flows and just letting the journey unfold. And it allowed me to relax. It allowed me to see the beauty in every piece of it. And it allowed me to see myself in a different light. It doesn't matter if she talked poorly about me afterwards. That moment was real. And I know it was real. You can't fake that energy. You can't fake those conversations. You don't run out to your phone or to the car to get your phone and stay half an hour after class just chatting because you hate somebody. That was pressure. That was pressure to conform. That was fear, lack. It was a lot of different emotions than I originally gave power to. And it allowed me to find more empathy and kindness and genuine curiosity for everyone else's story. And it all led me here. And I'm rediscovering my love of not only yoga, but of every piece of this fitness journey that I've had along my entire lifetime. It's bringing back sports, it's bringing back curiosity and the desire to get uncomfortable and try new things. It is making me want to teach, and it is making me want to share my knowledge and my experience and my patience and my ability to be great at what I do. Let things change your life. Let things get hard, let things get uncomfortable, and just keep going. Because nothing meant for you will miss you. You just have to put one foot in front of the other, and you just have to try and keep trying. And when it doesn't make any sense at all, you do it anyway. And you hope that one day you're lucky enough to experience what it was all about. Mm. Thanks for being here. I appreciate y'all so much. And get out there and try something new today. It can be little, it can be big, it can be a class, it could be jump roping, it could be going for a walk, just something that you don't normally do in your day. Something that makes you interested, lights you up. Something that's been crossing your path or your mind. Just go for it. Why not? And to everyone along the way that has hurt me, it's all love. I understand differently now. And I don't hold any hate or hurt any longer. I don't blame anyone for like derailing my journey or any of it, any parts of it. I think that it all built me into what I needed, and it all made me stronger and smarter and wiser and just a deep, such a better version of myself. It created such a better version, all of it, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And I have nothing but love and appreciation for every piece of it and all of you. So thank you. Thank you for making me cry. Thank you for hurting my feelings. Thank you for helping me understand that we are all just trying our best and that we are all dealing with things that we don't speak about and that we don't quite understand ourselves. Y'all make me better, and I love you.